Okay, so the lesson this week is turning two-dimensional paper into a three-dimensional sculpture in a very simple, basic, organic way that will teach a whole lot of different things. And lots of ages of children can do this. Obviously, if they're young, like in kindergarten, they're going to need some assistance, especially if there's one tricky step, which I will go over. But it's a very easy, versatile way to introduce what the difference is between a sculpture and a two-dimensional artwork, because you start out with a two-dimensional artwork. And if you do the crayons resist or the oil pastel resist at the beginning, you've also then taught them a little bit about pattern, and they've explored two media. They've explored the oil pastel and the watercolor, and it's a very open-ended project. You could also use painted paper for this. It just can't be too stiff, because that's what's great about watercolor, is it keeps the paper kind of soft. So how do we go about doing this? Well, that's what I'm going to show you. So I made 2 pieces of crayon resist paper, bright colors. And I've done this with various things, like at my elementary school, out in Valley Stream, our mascot was the Howl Owl. And so we used it vertically, and we made owls. And then we put big googly eyes on them and hung them all over the school. So you could do something like that. It just can't be too complicated or too skinny. So things like letters of the alphabet won't work with this. But abstract shapes might, or planets, or moons, or simple animals, like a very simple cat shape. And so the thing that I've done the most is fish, because a fish will fit into a science lesson really easily. And it's a basic shape, and pretty much every kid can make up a fish. So I'm going to start with one piece of paper, and I'm going to put the other one away. And the methodology is here. I'm going to give you a secret that you're going to love, I hope, because this secret is how to get kids to draw big. Because if I tell a child to draw a fish, they will draw a fish that big. Can you see? Very small. I don't know if that even showed up. I kind of don't want it to show up. They just tend to go into the center of the paper, and they make it too small. So I say, we want to make big, important fish. And if you actually want them to practice drawing fish in a sketchbook journal or on scrap paper, you could. But I almost always let them just draw it. And so the secret is the fish must touch all 4 sides of your paper. So we'll get the basic shape of the fish. And, a fish needs a tail, of course. So I'm going to make a tail. I hope is this dark enough? Am I showing this too so you can see it?
Yeah, it's coming through.
All right. And then I'm going to put some fins on my fish to make it more interesting. But you don't want to get too crazy. You want your fish to have big shapes. But now I've pretty much touched all 4 sides of my paper. So I have a really nice sized fish that's going to maximize the paper. Sometimes I'll use an 18 by 24 inch sheet, which is double this. It would be that size, really, really big. And in that case, the proportion might not work. But just know that your students are going to make it too skinny otherwise and too small. It's just what kids do. So what I'm going to do right now is cut out my shape. I'm just going to decide it's good enough, and make sure that you save the scraps, because you will see how beauteous they are. They are sensationally gorgeous. If you did your Craypa Resist right, you're going to have some nice leftovers for whatever you want to use. Look at these leftovers. How gorgeous are those? You know, that's a whole project right in itself, right there. All right, so now let's do the other side. So for this, the first lesson you do would be, I'm going to make this a little bigger, I've decided. The first lesson you do is going to be the Craypa Resist or the oil pastel resist. The second lesson then will be making the fish shape. There may be a third one where you stuff it and you put the string on it. Okay, so now I've got myself this fish. Here's where people go wrong. And if you're going to go wrong anywhere, in the lesson I say, read the last 2 sentences twice. I do say that because if you sew, you know how to do this. The idea is you put right sides together. Right sides together. So you have what's pretty this way. If I did it this way, where I have one white side, which is supposed to be the inside, and one of the outsides, I'll get 2 identical shapes and they'll be backwards. I won't be able to put them together. So right sides together. And very often what I'll do, especially for little kids, I probably don't have to do it for myself, but I'll give them a little staple just to hold the shape in place while we trace it. Now, I'm against tracers overall because I think if you have all these like exotic shapes, pigs and cows and whatever, that kids could just trace, even when they're little, circles and squares, they learn that the way they draw is not good enough. And they kind of think that the stencil is the better of the two. The only way you can get good at drawing is by drawing. And so my thing is kids can trace shapes they make themselves, but they shouldn't trace shapes that are made by grownups, at least when they're little, because it is self-defeating and it's not really teaching them anything except taking away their self-confidence. Now I'm going to trace around my own shape, holding it down. I've got my right sides together, so I know I'm going to be okay. And I'm also going to have more gorgeous, exotic, you can go off a little here and there, and your students will, trust me, go off here and there. So here we go. And I'm going to leave it to you. You don't have to do a fish if you don't want to. All right. And so now, very often kids will, and here, let me come get my handy dandy. If you ever see these, this is a staple remover. It's made by Stanley Bose. It's just the best one in the entire world because it works brilliantly, and it's not like those crampy ones that you always like hurt your hands with. All right, so here's my fish, and they're opposite each other. Can you see they're opposite each other?
Yeah.
They have to be opposite. Okay, now we're going to cut. Again, saving these gorgeous shapes that are gonna come off of this. I think you could see how easy this lesson is. The hardest part really is making the paper, unless you do like a really lame job of it. But for Craypa Resist, it's a 2-step process because you got to do the oil pastel, and then you have to do for watercolor. The word crepi is a brand name, and I just kind of grew up using Sakura crepis, so I have a lot of trouble changing my vocabulary from what is like using Scotch tape or Xerox. As someone's coming in the room. It is Rachel. Okay, let's let her in. All right. So here we are. All right, so now the magic begins. So you see how beautifully those fit together. All right, and you've got to make a plan for where you're going to stuff it. And you need like a good 4 to 5 inches somewhere, you know, and I would just sort of look at where is it going to be hard to stuff from. So I think the tails here are the narrowest part right here. So I'm going to leave this area here a little bit open right there. And I'm going to start and just go around and start stapling. Now you could glue these, but it takes forever. And if you have bright paper, the staples don't really show. It's very immediate. I don't normally like things like staples showing.
Professor, can I ask you something about that?
I can't hear you. What?
I want to ask you about that. When are students supposed to be stapling, or are we stapling?
Depends. In your grade level, you'll
my grade level, yeah. So then I want to
I mean,
ask
you could have them pound it down. You could get it ready and say, okay, you know, and they could kind of do that.
But
if you want to. But a little kid will not have the ability. There are tinier staplers, but I would say, what, 2nd, 3rd grade, they could probably start handling it themselves. But you'll know right away whether they have the skill or not. So
for me, I find I'm using always a glue gun all the time. Not there.
Okay, hot glue gun for this bad. No, because it's not good for paper, hot glue gun. No.
Okay, just wondering if that's...
I would say for this one, Elmer's glue would work fine. And I have some alternatives in the lesson plan. You could, for older kids especially, you can work with cloth and use Sobo glue. But the problem is you've got a really long time to wait. Okay, now let's see, where do I want to do this? Okay. Oops. I went too close to the edge here. I hang these up on ceilings, and you really, the staples disappear. They absolutely disappear. So I'm not too much of a stickler on that. Now you can use newsprint, but might as well use newspapers if the school has it. So what you want to do is take a small piece and just very gently fold it. You don't want it too like a hard thing. But if you have to get your, in my case, big fat hand in here. Now I want to do the tail first. I'm going to actually do smaller. If I go off camera, alert me, because I know sometimes I get too close to myself. And you know, you can, ooh, bad stapling. Oh my goodness. I should have gone in further. So you could use a pencil or a skinny ruler or a brush or something to push it in, you know, into the corner. If you've ever made any kind of stuffed anything with fabric, this is how you do it. It's sort of like a pillow, you know. Something just made a noise, but I don't see anybody. What you really want to have hanging. My daughter's sister-in-law is having a baby in June, and her nursery is outer space. So you could do a bunch of really gorgeous star shapes and hang those, you know, over the crib. And that would be inexpensive and lovely in every way. Making this look harder than it is. It's really not that hard. And you don't really need that much stuffing. A little goes a long way. We're just trying to make it a little bit puffy. Now, some other alternatives are you could glue you know, like a side fin on here. Let's say that I wanted to do that. I could glue something on there like that, or I could make a second shape the same size, glue them together so that it actually would look good from the back as well. There are all kinds of variations. You can use glitter and feathers. You can, you know, make a feathered fish, whatever, to decorate it. Because this is a little on the crafty side, but the reason I like it is that it's a very palpable, obvious way of getting it into kids' heads, what the difference between 2D and 3D is. I can see that I have substandard stapling here as well, so there. The little kids, many of them would be able to crumple up the paper themselves, but you know, somebody might have to work with them, you know, and that's just the way it is. So, here, let me get this. A hand stapler would probably be better than what I'm using here. I'm gonna call it a day and just say that's stuffed enough. So then you, just like a pillow, you just finish it off where you had your little hole. And there you have your sculpture. The last thing, if you're not gonna do like an eyeball or something, see, I could also use some of my leftover paper and collage something like this right on there and have kind of a really nice eyeball. I wanted to. Is to just basically decide where you'd like it to hang, how even you would want it. And then I gave you a piece of string, I think. You could also use yarn. Doesn't have to be colored string. This is just something I happen to have left over. I staple it in the middle, and then I try to do, maybe I didn't do it, leave enough room. Oh, I didn't, I'm okay. And then I just really just make an easy little knot so that it doesn't come apart. There you have it. We'll pretend that's on there. And it'll be, well, that side, this eyeball will not look very good on that side. So the eyeball has to be on the other side. And then, you know, if you want to, you can always clean up the little bit of the scoochy edges. You know, this is not necessarily exact. It's not an exacting sort of lesson. It's more, as I say, organic. Okay, anybody have any questions about stuffing paper?
No, thank you.
Anybody?
Nope. Professor, are you
Thank you.
expecting from our homework to have 2 designs on each side, or can it be a universal? If I like, let's say, one pattern.
Oh no, I don't mind. The thing we did many weeks ago was we just made 2 pieces of paper. And very often when I have the children do this, I don't tell them where it's going.
Okay.
I just tell them we're exploring pattern and we're making paper, because otherwise they'll draw fish scales or they'll draw owls or something, you know? So I don't let them know what we're doing. We're gonna be making something with the paper. So I tell them my thing, and the kids think this is so funny. I would say, do not fall in love with your paper, with your painting, because we are going to transform it. And I did enough things with these kids over time that they learned that that was actually an adventurous good thing. But I didn't want them to think we were just cutting up their paintings because we didn't like them. So I warned them ahead of time, but I don't tell them where we're going, because that really would ruin the freedom of how they make a pattern. You know, and I have suggestions in your lesson plan as to some of the artists you could look at, or some of the schools or countries where artists use repetitive pattern that might inspire. You know, but you don't. You could just have them do lines and zigzags, whatever, however you want to approach the lesson. It's very, very, very open-ended. But the kids will absolutely love them. And I dare say, remember we had that reading back week number 2 where we were talking about bats and the kids running around the room like crazy people with their bats, and they all just traced a bat shape. If I were going to do bats, this is how I would do them. We would do magic bats. We would do fantasy bats. They would have to make up the shape themselves. And so, you know, it would be Halloween with a huge difference, because the learning that went on during that bat project was very limited. It was just practicing tracing somebody else's shape and cutting. It wasn't even stuffed. So it didn't really have any grounding in what I would say would be valid art education. So, all right, so I'm going to stop the Zoom and we'll discuss homework.